Welcome to another episode of the Exploring the Vintage NFT Space podcast with Zero G. Today, I'm really excited to have on the show Will, who is the chief writer behind the ERC 721 standard, which is the de facto standard on the largest platform that NFTs are traded on, which is Ethereum. Thanks for joining me today, Will.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to talking to you. You've got a really fascinating background. So before we delve into the crypto and NFTs and all that stuff, why don't we kind of talk about your background in software and IT?
Yeah, so I started off in computer engineering, electrical engineering, math in undergrad. And from a very early age, I got into open source. So,
Mhm.
in high school, I was running the Red Hat CDs. Now they're
Oh
Fedora,
yeah.
same thing.
Mhm.
And, my friend got me into Linux and he's like, here's the CD. You used to do trade CDs. It got me the CD. And I put it in. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. We're just, there's an XK CD about this, going deeper. You're swimming, the sharks are eating you. And that was my experience. I'm trying to load this thing up. It wasn't working. And I had to I had to reconfigure my internet driver for my Realtek, you know, modem or my, Ethernet
Yeah.
card. And it wasn't compiling. Like you had to compile your code back then, your card to even get on the internet. And you're
Mhm.
off the internet. So you're not like searching the internet for answers. You're like, the code won't compile. Like that's it. And so I got it to compile. Like I fixed a couple lines of code with whatever I knew about C back then. And I figured out how to save the patch and I got it into the Linux kernel. So my first, contribution to open source was a kernel patch in like 99 or something. So, and it worked out. There was a mailing list. I knew how to use mailing lists. There was a IRC. I knew how to use IRC. And I'm like, okay, I fixed these 2 lines of code. I want to get this back into the kernel. I think that's how you play this game. And they're like, yeah, cool. And so I got my commit in and I was like, okay, this makes sense. So not everybody gets that experience, especially with committing code into the kernel. And that was me. Like I was like, okay, I'm one for one. Where do I go from here? And so as I'm going through engineering school and learning about coding and all these things, after I got out of school, I landed just a great summer program with Google. Now they call it the Summer of Code. I was in the first one and I was working on Linux on KDE. And just my experience in programming has just been always around this open source. And it's just been great experiences every time. So I just coming back, it's like, I guess it's a beginner's luck, right? So beginner's luck is a thing. Like there's statistics around that and it's just population bias, but it hit me. So I just had a good experience getting into open source and I took that pretty far. So that's my
That's
beginning with engineering and coding.
that's really fascinating. Yeah, I remember back the early days of Linux. I having to do the like you said, compile drivers for your hardware modem and that kind of stuff. So it's definitely good times. I obviously didn't go as hardcore as you did and commit anything to the kernel. That's really awesome. You did that at such a young age.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 lines of code, but it did more for me than it did for the kernel. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think at least in the nerd circle I hung around with, that was kind of a badge of honor to actually have something committed to the kernel. So
Yeah, and so I get it. So continuing the story, so at Google, I was working on KDE, so they got you a mentor, which was
mhm.
great. My mentor, this is KDE, so everyone's from Europe. So we had time zones. I was doing remote work in Europe and New York, working on Linux, open source, and the role that I had found I was working on something specific. It was related to Plasma, what is now called Plasma. Like 20 years later, it finally got released. But I was working on this one feature called Session Manager, and as I was working on this, I'm like, this isn't the problem. We don't need a session manager for KDE. We need to make it easier for everybody to get contributing because it was so hard for me to get started with KDE compared to the Linux kernel. I was like, oh, this has got to be easier. So actually, my biggest contribution to KDE was improving their mentorship program, was basically developer relations for this Linux desktop environment. And so that's where I made a dent. And today they still have this mentorship program years later. And I've been using this model ever since. And so I saw this work. I saw this, sometimes people are creative, right? If you make art, you make music, you got a harmonica, you pour your heart out, you play your song, you write the lyrics, you have the harmonica and the lyrics, you might have to mix the two together, you get music. You're done, right? Mm-hmm. That's easy. Composing, well, not that easy, but it is straightforward. You've got this thing in your heart, you get it out on the harmonica, when you're done. Maybe you've got to market it, maybe you've got to push the message out, but the production, that's the production. Open source, you have this thing in your head, you make it, but you're not done. Open source always has a community component. And so to successfully create the product, you are worrying about setting up issue tracking, onboarding new developers, getting developers interested in your product instead of just users. A lot of people have this romantic idea. I want to make software. I have this problem. I'm going to solve the problem with software, and we're going to deliver it to people. Like, that's the idea. But that's really not how it works. Open source, every time you're making a machine, you're making a community, because open source is not just about that one release. The motto is release early, release often. How do you release often without getting burned out? You have a community. And so I picked up on that the first project I was working on, and I realized that's how you do open source, is you got to make these communities each time. And I also learned that a lot of people don't focus on that. They focus a lot on the product or a lot on the technology, like they want to do something, or and the people are clear about this. I'm not here to make products. I'm here to study. I'm here to make something. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to make the product, if you want to solve the problem in the marketplace or whatever you're doing, you got to think on these multifaceted.
How did you encourage developers to contribute? How did you build that developer community? That's
just remove the barriers. It's so hard to get involved in open source. Maybe before GitHub, or maybe even today, but it's just not clear what you should do. However many people are using your software, whatever thing you're making, and open source is not just software. There's more than just software. There's open music. I'm into that too. So if you make a thing, there's probably less people that want to contribute to your project than just want to use your project. So it's a narrow window. Think of how hard you're promoting your project to users. And if it's an open source project, usually that's not even that amazing. And then divide that by something. And that's how hard you're going after developers. So what I found is that if you're a developer, you have to fight to help. You have to fight to contribute. If you want to get a patch in, that's why did you say it's a badge of honor? Because they're not letting everybody into this party.
Yes.
Why?
Exactly.
Because it's you don't even know where the gate is. So the way that I worked on KDE is I said, okay, let's just assume some people want to contribute. Let's just assume that we've got this many contributors and there's more people that but they can't find it. And they're like, that's fair. And I said, okay, well, we're going to have to update our homepage. And right on the homepage, very visible, we need a button that gets them from the homepage to an onboarding experience. The same way that we onboard customers or the users, people that use your software, we need to think about that onboarding experience for developers. We need a red carpet here. And they said, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because it used to be, you would go on the website, you would go to the bug tracker, you'd make an account, wait 2 days. That's a whole thing, right? So I was like, no, I'm going to put my email address there. People are going to call me. They're going to call me and I'm going to help them until they get it. That's what I call onboarding. And they're like, oh yeah, we want that. So I got commit access to the homepage, and I'm editing the homepage. I'm like, okay, here's the link. Is that cool? Yeah, here's the link. And I put my email address, put my name, my email, and I did it. Jumping forward to 721, big jump. But ERC-721, I'm just going to say, if you're in NFT space for 4 years now, if you've been here since 4 years ago, NFTs are ERC-721 is 4 point something years old. If you've been around for 4 years, you have my phone number. You have my phone number for this phone right here. You have it because I gave it to everybody. If you're in NFTs and you had questions, I said, I am onboarding developers and people don't understand this stuff. So call me. And that was the ticket, because a lot of people were too shy. They didn't want to do interviews. They didn't want to embarrass themselves by asking questions, especially if they're big companies or something like that. And they're like, but I'll do a one-on-one phone call. I'm like, here's my number, call me. And so many people, if they're old school, just you ask people, you say, do you have Will Entriken's phone number? That's the badge. If they're in the space, they have my number, and they got it a long time ago. Now I don't give my phone number out every day. I have I have a Twitter space. I do some interviews. I have a Twitch, but yeah, that's in the beginning, when you had to bring your first 10, 20, 100 people on board, you got to hold their hand, man. You really got to treat them better than customers, better, they're partners.
I know that's really fascinating. I mean, a lot of that community building can apply to, crypto and the NFT communities as well. But, I remember when I was trying to just find out, I think it was in 2018, when they were talking about moving to proof of stake. And I remember just trying to navigate as a user, trying to navigate the different web pages to find out the information. I gave up because I guess unless you're in the inner circle, it's not communicated in a way that anyone can understand. It was just, so I just gave up, and I would check every year or two. And now it finally looks like we're going to get that we're going to get that merge this year, which is very exciting. But no, that's really generous of you to spend so much time helping to onboard people.
I think you nailed it. I mean, people give up. You have some level of interest, and you're like, I'm going to do this. And at some point you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to do this next year. Maybe someone else will realize it. And YouTube, a lot of people go to YouTube or video sharing websites, and there's a lot of people that are talking about this stuff. Some of the technical videos are decent. There's one thing that's these video sharing websites are good for, and there's a lot of things that they're not. Because a lot of people that make the good videos are shilling. They're shilling specific things. They're like, let me tell you why. I'm bleeping myself out. Why is the best project you should buy today? And look at the price; it's going up. And here's the charts. Here's how it works. I'll answer your top 10 questions about why proof of stake on is better than Ethereum. Number one, gas. Number one, save the environment. Number two, blah blah blah, transactions per second. And look at the momentum. And the price is so low. So there might be a nugget in there, but that's not high quality videos. The one thing you can pick up is the culture. So why do people want to do this stuff? What are people interested in? Why are people quitting their day jobs to go work on this stuff? Like that stuff, these video sharing websites are really helpful to pick up in the culture. But anything where there's stakeholder economy involved, suspect. Be very suspect.
There's so much, like you said, there's so much shilling and pump and dumps, and I don't know. It's just, I mean, again, that goes back to, the entire altcoin scene has been rife with that from the beginning. But yeah, I feel bad for people that are just coming into the space and don't understand that, though, because it's very
really?
easy. I feel bad for people that because I think it's very easy to make a compelling argument for some of these rando low market cap altcoins and compare them on paper to some of these established cryptos where anyway, most of them never amount to anything, or they'll have one or two pumps and then they just evaporate, the dustbin of history. So yeah. So anyway, there's always newbies coming into the space, and I hate to see people get rooked just because of their lack of technical acumen,
Well, I'm not calling that technical acumen. I'm calling this street smarts or media literacy. Let's call it media literacy.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
This applies not to just crypto. This applies to any product for sale on video. In China, they call this live streaming, or what do they call it in China? Live shopping or something. Shoputainment, or something like that. It's a whole industry, and people live stream. It's like, that famous TV channel where they have a TV channel and show you products, but people that are not telling you that they're getting paid by these products. This is totally against FTC guidelines if you're in the US, or probably some other rules and regulations elsewhere. And you totally can't do that, but people do it. And it's for all kinds of products, not just crypto. Any video on YouTube that has a product in there and has a link to Amazon or some rainforest related website, and has a link with a referral, they're making money. And they should be telling you, hey, I'm getting paid to do this. Usually not.
Yeah,
And
I
so
guess.
that's not about crypto. That's a media literacy thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you have to. I think you're right. You should probably be approaching everything with a fair bit of cynicism, especially like you said, if there's a product involved.
And coins, when you sell, well, I guess they're not selling you the coins directly, but you got to recognize that if they're selling you stock or something, they own that stock or something. Like so I mean, my daughters are 3 and 1. So, this is something I got to teach them. Media literacy, I need them to be in like the top 1% of media literacy, because that is a critical skill for the century, because there's just too much media out there. It used to be you could deal with 100 people in your life, and that was, enough. I'm going far back. And you could, even with the internet, even with pen pals, even with, but now there's just too many people out there. And the human brain gets lost in these things like, do these people represent my interest? Are they trustworthy? Are they spammers? Are they robots? Like the human brain, you got to build defenses against this stuff in crypto, in shoputainment, in anything.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, yeah, I hadn't thought about that specifically. Well, when did you get introduced or find out about crypto?
2017. So my friend, my neighbor actually from high school is Rob Leschner, and he started Compound, which is basically DeFi. And I guess he is the grandfather of DeFi. And he's telling me, come to California. We're gonna start something crazy. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do automated market making. He's breaking it down. I'm like, you're gonna be in jail in 3 years. All of you. Everybody you talk to everybody in California is gonna be in jail in 3 years. They're not in jail. It's been 3 years. And I misread that. I miscalculated how long it'll take everyone to go to jail. But I'm like, this doesn't add up to me. This isn't kosher. Something's illegal here. These things look like securities. Looks like we're trading securities. I don't want anything to do with that. And I didn't do it. I didn't get involved in DeFi. I didn't get involved in Ethereum. And remember, Ethereum was just coins back then. It was just ICOs and coins. That was it. And he calls me back. He calls me a few times. He's like, well, listen, don't write off Ethereum. Go look at it. Go make a name for yourself. Go find something out there. And maybe there's something else that's for you. I said, thanks. And I checked it out. And then I found CryptoKitties. Perfect timing. If it wasn't him, if it wasn't Rob, if it wasn't CryptoKitties, if it wasn't 2018 January, this wouldn't have happened. And I opened the page and I saw the CryptoKitties. And I'm like, okay, pictures of cats. Cool. Remember, YouTube was pictures of cats. Don't look down on just something because it's ridiculous or feline or something. I'm like, okay, pictures of cats, that's a thing. And then I was going through GitHub. I was looking at how does this work or something. And then I saw ERC-721. So I did not create ERC-721. Dieter Shirley, part of Axiom Zen, now Dapper Labs, Flow, CryptoKitties, all that, he created it. And then it just sat there. It was sitting on GitHub. One of those plenty of issues or initiatives that got started. And then, I'm sure he got busy. I'm sure having as many CryptoKitties sold was a big distraction versus the, pro bono work of writing a standard that maybe no one will ever use. So I opened this and I read this GitHub and I said, this is not about cats. And I opened it up and I saw the comments. I was reading the discussions. I saw the meetups, and people were like, oh, CryptoKitties, I want to make crypto dogs. I need a standard so I can make crypto dogs. Or I don't even know if it was dogs, but it's crypto, some animal. And I'm like, you don't get it either. And other people are like, yeah, I'm going to make crypto this, crypto that. They're just copying, which is fine too. I know there's going to be copycats, but I'm like, you guys are off by like a factor of 1,000, like many thousand, because this is way bigger than pictures of cats, pictures of dogs. This is like real world stuff. This is like supply chain. This is like FedEx. And that's what I saw. So when I saw ERC-721, the original draft, I saw FedEx. I saw supply chain. And I saw this is big time. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to connect, but I said, this is a big thing. And also there's some momentum here. There wasn't FedEx momentum. There wasn't where we were, but there were people that sort of got pieces of this. And I said, okay, let's check our assets. You can put you edit this in post, right? You get the picture from Princess Bride. What are our assets? We got a flame retardant vest. We have a, and they're going into battle. It's like, what are our assets? Okay, we've got pictures of cats, always a great start. We've got a little bit of technology that's stalled on GitHub. We got a bunch of people that want to move this commercially. They've got this thing they want to move commercially. We've got everybody agrees that we need to do this together. We can't have two standards. We got to have one standard, and because we got to work together. And nobody's taking the lead here. And everybody's got ideas on how this should get done, but nobody's really organizing the ideas or listening to anybody else. Everybody's just talking past each other. And I'm like, I've been here before. I can do this. And so I nominated, I don't know what I did. I showed up as the custodian, the steward. Some people call me the steward of ERC-721. And I showed up and I said, okay, well, my name's Will. This is my first project. I'm new here. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm very interested in this project and I'm going to work hard on this. I'm going to work very hard. And I'm going to make a new draft constantly. And I'm going to take everybody's questions until I understand this, you understand this, we understand each other, and all the ideas have been heard. And also, I'm going to get the standard passed through Ethereum EIP process before anybody else. That was my platform. And people were like, that's what I want. I want my opinions to be heard, and I want this through to be finalized standard. And we had to do a lot to get that done. So there actually was no standardization process back then. And we were making the machines to build the road as we were walking on the road. So we were writing the standardization process. We were working on, I was calling Solidity. I was like, Solidity, we need some features here to make interfaces that we can write standards around. Very responsive. Solidity team is great. They appreciate feedback. They move. They're not like, this wasn't my idea. They're not like, great idea. Who's going to do this? None of that stuff. That's some open source stuff you might see in some projects. And that's how I got started. So that's the beginning. I saw it. I saw the vision. I saw the assets. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to do this work. Plus, my wife is in the Philippines. She takes credit too because she was out of town. And I was just up all night, all time zones, making drafts.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's remarkable. You saw that you had the vision for what this could become so early too. I mean, it took me a long time to really get it. I have to admit, but it really does have the ability to interact with, every facet of life, like you were saying. From you can do it for so many different, you can tie it to IRL stuff to strictly digital ownership. There's so many ways you can use that.
Yeah, it was. If you read ERC-721, it was meant to be read. It wasn't meant to be some nerd stuff. And there's definitely parts of it that have been copy pasted other places. Good. And if you read some of it, you can skim it. You might be like, oh, here's some use cases I didn't think about, like NFTs that you can't transfer. Now, some people are calling that soulbound tokens. Vitalik called them soulbound tokens. That's in there. Negative value assets. I haven't seen anybody do this, but you can have an asset that represents a debt. You can have a token that represents a debt or a mark, like three strikes.
I actually did just hear about that the other day. So apparently early on, some people created some tokens they called beer coin, which was essentially an IOU for a beer. So
yeah. But when you're writing a standard, you've got to think, 10 years out, trying to make these decisions. And there's compromises in ERC-721. And, I would do it differently today if we start over, but I won't because the momentum's important. But if you read in there, there's some stuff. There's some stuff in the future that hasn't come out yet. And you can see it in there.
Yeah, I'll have to.
About this stuff.
Yeah, I have to admit, I haven't read it all the way through. I personally have only read bits and pieces. I was reading about a couple of the sections that were referencing other projects that were inspirations, that kind of thing. So I owe it to myself. After this, I'll sit down and I'll just read through it. I'm fascinated to see what else I'll find in there now.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely wild. So how long did that process take? So once you took the reins and really decided to run with it, like you said, you were putting in tons of hours. How long did that take you?
Well, I started in about January 2018, and we finalized it on June 21st. So about 5 months. compared to ERC-20, that's like 4 times faster. And this is pretty intense in terms of now these things move a lot faster. I mean, we've kind of laid some ground rules and EIPs have gotten a lot faster, but that was very fast. That was intense. 6 months, getting this done in 6 months, 5 months.
No, interesting. Did you run into any interesting challenges or roadblocks along the way?
Just a few. So Solidity. So technically, there was the Solidity is the language we use for smart contracts on Ethereum. That's a language. There's also Viper and there's Yule, but Solidity is a very popular one. And when we want to standardize something, we want to articulate a way that you're going to create something. Like we're going to say, here's what you're going to make. It's going to fit in this box, right? And we call that, in computer terms, we call that an interface. And Solidity did not have a nice way to create interfaces that are follow object-oriented programming best practices. Let's say it that way. They weren't really interfaces. They had the word interface, but they weren't an interface. And so that made them really not suitable for defining a standard. And I was defining a standard. We were defining a standard. So that's what we needed. We needed this in our toolbox to define something to define a standard. So I got a hold of them and I said, look, can we make this change? Can we make this change? If you scroll down ERC-721, there's a list of issues. So I made at least 20 issues against Solidity. Not only did I make the issues, I assumed that all 20 of those issues were going to be fixed because it's like a dependency. Like I made 20 issues. I'm like, here's 20 things we need to change. And I'm assuming every one of those is changed and I'm going to publish this. So if those 20 things aren't changed, then what I publish is wrong. That's called an assertion. Like I'm asserting that these things are going to get fixed, which is kind of a long branch to lean out on when I did not contribute to Solidity. This is my first project in blockchain. I don't even own any Ethereum. Like I'm new and I'm telling Solidity project, hey, these are things we want to change. And I'm assuming they're going to do it. And I'm staking our standard on those things getting fixed. Wow. Like that was going out on a ledge. But we were right. So use some color correction. Yeah, there we go. So that was going out on a ledge and it worked out. You know, that was something that we needed to fix and that got fixed. Here's a second major problem that was not expected. At that point, EIPs, the whole process of ERCs, now they're renamed. They're called EIPs now. So it's actually EIP-721. I see how many people know that. But the EIPs were more focused on consensus changes like Ethereum 2, Whisper protocol, proof of stake, you know, these big changes like that. And so all of these changes were kind of signed off by the core developers of Ethereum. So this is an organizational problem. Exact opposite. We have programming, interfaces, object-oriented design philosophy, and people problems. So I'm jumping over. And so you could not get an EIP passed without blessing from core developers, which is a huge, a small bottleneck, really small orifice to go through. And that is not ideal. You know, you want to get these things moved. And we want to have this decentralized or delegated or something. And so I created the process to do that. So I said, okay, well, we need to have the core developers give some authority up so that we can pass these standards without them. Because you're getting on this phone call, it's like, hey, I'm trying to pass ERC-721. They're like, we're trying to solve a huge problem with Ethereum right now. Like, that's not important. They didn't say this is important, but I'm like, you know, they've got other stuff to worry about. And these application layer problems, that's like a different world. So we changed that. We delegated some of this authority. And I created something called Last Call, which I totally stole from Swift. Swift is a programming language for iOS and Apple stuff and other, you know, works on Linux. But we stole this idea called Last Call. And so I said, okay, here's the idea. We're going to make a draft. We're going to have it's 14-day. We're going to have an RSS feed. If people want to get involved in these discussions, they're going to subscribe to RSS. If they don't, who cares? But they're going to see it. And if they got a comment, you know, comment now or forever hold your peace. We can't be waiting 4 months, 2 years to pass one of these standards. Like there's got to be, you know, a timeline. And that worked out. So ERC-721 is the first specification that went through the 2-week process. So it's called last call. It's 2-week last call. And so that I did not expect. I thought that this was going to be, there's a rule, 721. This means this has already been done 720 times before, right? So number 721, how hard can this be? There's got to be like a checklist, A, B, C, D, done. It wasn't like that.
What was it? So in the system, so like there's this 2-week period for people to bring up issues. So then like do people like then agree to like further fixes and then another 2-week period after it's modified? Is that how that works?
Yep, this is specified in EIP 1. And so let's call it, I put those words in, but they've probably changed some, giving you maybe an old definition. But basically, you work on your standard. So EIPs are standards, they're specifications, and you write it, and then you get it to a certain point, and then you open it up to last call. If there's any change, any normative change, so not a typo, but like you said you got to do this, but then maybe that's optional. Like something went from required to optional. That's a normative change. That's totally different in the world of standards. If something like that happens, you're done. You're kicked out. So you failed the 2 weeks. You failed to go 2 weeks without any problems. Or if anything is identified where there's any legitimate complaint, you failed to do this. You made a standard, the format's wrong. You failed to link to a certain thing. You didn't post it properly. Those, you get kicked out. But then you can start over. You go back to draft. If you feel up to it, you can go to last call again. And then you got to go 2 weeks without any problems being found. And I've shut down some of these things in the last calls. There's an incentive. If you write one of these things and you have a draft, there's an extremely strong incentive for you to publish it. You get some credit, your name shows up on a website, your name's right there. People might quote these things, and there's, people know these numbers. So there's like a marketing benefit to these. So there's a strong incentive for people to publish. So there's got to be an equal incentive for people to not publish. Warren Buffett says, I got to hire somebody to tell me which acquisitions not to go through with. So that's why we have the RSS feed. And people like me, are showing up and be like, well, I do not think this should proceed past last call. I think there's problems here. I think this is ineligible. I think this is fatal problem. And that's the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. You don't want to, you want to have some sort of check against garbage stuff being put out there, right? You just don't want to accept everything that's submitted. So that makes sense that you need some legitimate scrutiny and not just rubber stamping everything. Because of course like I would imagine that going back and trying to clean up stuff, like if you submit a standard, that once that's published, you're going to have apps or dApps that rely on that. And then if you have to go back and revise that, you're going to potentially break all of the stuff that was written to.
You can't revise it. You're not allowed. They're final. You
Okay.
can make typo fixes. I've done this. I've had typos fixed. I've had, clarifications. Even that's like too much. But you can't change anything because these are interlocking puzzle pieces. So you can't just like change this and then like that doesn't work.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, so once it's approved and finalized, there's no more changes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's again, it's remarkable. Right now, pretty much every project, bar a couple that are using like the 1155, pretty much everything is using 721 right now. I mean, it's ubiquitous. It's the most popular standard for NFTs on the internet, I would imagine. So it's had such a wide range of applications. So, and I think we're honestly, looking back, I really feel like we're just now at the cusp of this stuff really taking off, because like again, we're finally starting to see some of these different scaling solutions hit Ethereum. We're finally going to see the move to POS. I mean, it just feels like we're just right at a cusp, and that's just a feeling that I have, right? But it's but I'm hopeful too. I mean, because I really admire what Vitalik and company and contributors like yourself have been able to pull off with this. I mean, this could have easily failed in a million different ways, right? I mean, so anyway, I'm really excited for the future to see this coming, because I ultimately I want to see more people onboarded into cryptos. And I view NFTs as probably the most effective way of onboarding new users into crypto. Like it's hard for them to wrap around and incentivize them to get into cryptocurrencies and actually open a wallet. Like because a lot of people, like even if there's the potential for monetary gain, like that's risky and kind of a gamble and scary. But like you're saying, like with like pictures of cats, right? I mean, it's very unassuming, it's disarming, but it also gives them a incentive to jump through that hoop to onboard, right? So I think that's really powerful.
I like what you're saying, and I agree. From my perspective, blockchain is NFTs, and everything else is just scams. Quote me on that. But mostly the value proposition for a lot of tokens, ICOs, is just make money. And honestly, making money is not sexy. That's just not a sexy value. That's sexy for some people, but pictures of cats is more sexy for more people. Hey, let's have fun. Hey, let's have parties. Parties. NFTs bring parties. ICOs don't bring parties, right? So people could get on a boat or get on a part. I mean, the NFT parties are way better than the ICO parties. And they're communities. They're exclusive ownership, which is good and bad, but there's limited supply. ICOs, you can split them a million ways. When I'm saying ICOs, I mean tokens, all the ERC-20s, 1155s sometimes. So they're just not as interesting. Finance is this interesting. We don't walk around all day thinking about finance. Maybe crypto people are different. Maybe crypto people, they walk around with a wallet in their pocket, checking how much tokens go up and down. That's not normal people. That doesn't scale. Anybody who cares about that, the world, the messaging of this project has been a success. Everybody on earth who wants to know about this stuff knows about it in terms of crypto, money, tokens up and down, investing, DeFi, these projects, everybody knows about them. There's 100% penetration in knowledge, not 100% penetration in use, just because people don't need that stuff. But in terms of the things that you do care about, maybe they might include things like pictures or more smaller group stuff, not infinitely divisible money. A lot of people just don't care about money. They're like, well, I'm not in it for the money. I don't own any of that stuff. I have not bought any of that stuff. I've received a few tokens. I got some caveats here. I don't play any of these games. I bought my first NFT a couple of months ago. I own a couple because I do some tests. I test smart contracts, so I have a couple, but I do tests and trades. But the normal way that people buy them, I just got mine first a month or two ago. So I'm not even interested in that stuff. I'm not interested in crypto. I'm barely interested in NFT. I'm more interested in these parties, the artwork, the possibilities, supply chain, pharma, changing the world. That's why I'm in it. I'm in it for these things. So like you said, if we're going to grow this, we've got a lot more value propositions. And so this is a reason to go make a wallet.
It's funny, you're talking about like the parties and clubs. One of the things I wrote a Twitter thread early last year that I was like, one of the things we're going to see is access to venues like stadiums or whatever, where you scan your phone and lo and behold, later in the year, I saw a little clip on Twitter where basically you show your public address on your phone and it validates that your ownership and lets you in. That's super cool.
And this is happening already. NFTs don't just mean blockchain. They don't mean Ethereum. NFTs have been around for thousands or hundreds of years, at least, since public notaries. And so these concepts are not new. It just happens that we got a little technology around them now. We can use blockchain. I'm just as excited. So if we're talking about going to a stadium and getting access to a thing from your phone, one cool way to do it is using MetaMask on an iPhone because you own an NFT on Ethereum. That's cool. And it is cool because they can track how many tickets you have. If you showed up before, there's a reason why that's cool. It's just as cool to me is if they have their own app, which is kind of a minus point because I don't want your special app. And you show up and you track me there, which is kind of a minus point because, I don't want you tracking me specifically, but tracking me generally feels different. And, you know, getting special perks for being a loyal customer. That used to be a thing. It used to be when you do something, when it used to be when you fly business class, they know who you are and they bring you a drink. Like that used to be a thing. Now business class is like everybody has it, it's easier to get, especially pandemic. It used to be like a special thing. You used to go to special stores and like they know you have an account. That's gone. Used to be you go to Subway and you buy 10 hoagies, you get one free. That's gone. Like they don't even know how many hoagies you buy. So NFTs do this, but it's not because of the NFTs. It's just a really good business model that everybody else is sucking at. So I'm not talking down on NFTs. It just happens to be NFTs are probably going to get this done instead of sandwich cards that you stamp and get 10 you get 10th one free.
Yeah, the other aspect to that too is like you're talking about these different loyalty schemes or whatnot. I mean, it's also morphed over the years too, where now it's a way of turning you actually into the product, where they're just taking all the data that they gather and they're monetizing that and selling off your data. And or like I read the other day that now when you use Alexa, like Amazon will then do an auction for the next ad for you at a much higher rate based on your last query to the Alexa. It's just, I don't know, so like weird, creepy, amazing, like what goes on with your data.
Yeah, and for some reason, people think today that crypto is immune from that. It's not. Crypto actually makes that worse. Correct that. The crypto universe that a lot of maximalists think is coming, which is not coming, that universe is worse for data privacy than we are today.
Yeah, I
mean, because people will probably use one account. Crypto solves this. You can have 100 accounts. You can have 100 accounts and use different ones for everything. People don't do that though. So they're vulnerable to data aggregation. That's not really happening yet. We're not having it where you load a website and you get a different ad because you have XYZ in your wallet. We don't have that yet. We will probably never get there. NFTs will probably not be that popular to get to that point. The real world where harvesting your search results, your search queries on search browsers is going to be more valuable than tracking your wallet. But your wallet's more accurate. It knows exactly the things you own, when you bought them, how you bought them, where you got them from, where you traded them. Like it knows all that stuff. But your fears and emotions are what drive sales, and your fears and emotions are what you type into search engines every day. You don't type your fears and emotions when you're buying an avatar picture of a cat.
It's great you bring up that point because, like I got into altcoins, one of the big reasons I got into altcoins is because like you're saying, one of the chief problems that, unintentionally was created like by Bitcoin is that it's not truly anonymous and it's not truly fungible. I thought, early on, I thought that things like Zcash and Monero, even if you because maybe a lot of people don't really appreciate privacy, at least for fungibility, I thought it would be way more successful than it's been. It's been relatively, the adoption has been very small. I mean, maybe you'd consider it a failure in the market, maybe not, but they're still around. Yeah, Monero and Zcash both. Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of other alternatives, but I mean, compared to the value they provide, I mean, I think it
should be default. You're right.
Yeah, exactly.
That should be the default.
Right. I mean, again, even if you don't care about privacy, the coins themselves should be fungible. And now, you hear about certain exchanges or whatnot won't allow you to deposit or won't accept a deposit if it's been mixed, right? I don't know. It's I think that's a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not responsible. You don't know what happened.
Exactly.
And now you're flagged.
I could do an over-the-counter deal with you I could buy a painting from you, or I could, or I could sell you a beer or something. And you didn't know that UXTO wasn't three hops down the line was mixed or came from Silk Road or whatever. I mean, I think that really kind of harms the.
Oh, and P.S. Guess what? Silk Road or whatever, maybe what you bought on Silk Road is illegal in the U.S., but it's legal in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe, porn's illegal in the Middle East, some places.
No,
So there's a lot of things, beers. I was in, or was I Dubai or Qatar?
yeah.
Beer's illegal.
Yeah.
Like that's a
Like
whole thing. So
people go to jail for alcohol there. It's scary. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can get beer in the hotel, but it's like $15 a bottle. And then we've got, you can't be gay in Russia or whatever's going on there. So there's different laws in different places. And so when you look at Bitcoin, everything's traceable. Something could be illegal. It could get flagged in one place. Who trusts these flags? I'm not trying to say that rules for or against gays, I'm not making that. I'm not
No, of
saying
course.
rules for or against beer. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying rules for or against money laundering. I'm not saying anything about any rules. What I'm saying is there's different rules in different places.
Yeah.
And so whichever government you live in is going to have different rules. And when you have these non-fungible coins, there's each one of these has a history and a
Yeah.
different legality in different countries, which can get flagged at any time.
Yeah, you can like have the same wallet and travel across the world, spend the same coins in if you spent the same coin in two different countries, it'd be illegal in one and be legal in the other.
Right. And so there's benefits to that. There's, maybe governments like that. But from a technical perspective, from designing this, from using this, Monero is way better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I I would hope that in the future there's some improvements on the Bitcoin side. And I don't know what if there's any proposals for Ethereum in terms of I hadn't heard of any, but I would like to see some privacy solutions there too. But I mean, I know right now everyone's got their hands wrapped up with the current big scaling and move to proof of stake. But yeah, I agree. I really think fungibility is a big missing piece. So yeah,
But it
again,
just
that's
shows you
why.
people's priorities. We
Yeah,
could have done that.
mhm,
Monero exists.
yeah,
Zcash, Bitcoin Zcash. I mean, that makes sense. Didn't take off. And so
yeah.
it
I
just
mean,
shows you what people's priorities are.
yeah. I mean, and I know there's other alternatives to like fungibility and privacy. I really think that in order for it to work, though, it has to be done by default at the protocol layer. Like I know Bitcoin Cash has Cash Fusion, which is a really great privacy feature, but it's optional, right? So unless everyone's doing it, I remember reading a paper years ago about Zcash where because so few people were using shielded transactions, they were able to do like trace that
Yeah.
down, and they were able to even track the I think the payouts for the that the foundation was receiving in the founders, right? Because
Yeah.
anyway, it's so yeah, like that's where Monero really still is probably the best because it's anonymous by default.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess that was a little segue, but I don't know that just that whole space of crypto. I think that'll be fun to see. Like maybe we were just wrong and too early, or maybe no one will ever care. I mean, that's going to be fun to see how that plays out. But I think it's important. Um,
I mean, I have an opinion. It's like anybody can make any money. Any fiat can make money. Any altcoin can make money. This is the altcoin question. Bitcoin was first. And well, first-ish. So we can respect Bitcoin because it's first. And there's something about being first that produces a value that altcoins will never get. I got some real problems with Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin should be illegal just for the carbon, just because it's proof of work. I think proof of work should be illegal. And that's a whole thing. But regardless of the altcoins, there's really just something magic about Bitcoin being first that you can never duplicate. And in a world where anybody can duplicate anything and anybody can make money out of thin air, and there's a strong incentive to make money out of thin air, somebody who can't do that, Bitcoin, has, kind of an aura around it. And, that's good and bad. I mean, it's good for Bitcoin. I think it's bad for proof of work. I think proof of work is bad for Bitcoin is contributing to the badness that is proof of work. And what are you going to do? So I'm not hopeful that we're going to see a version 2. Privacy by default, I don't think we're going to find a privacy by default money to replace Bitcoin, just because it's yet another altcoin that's not going to be first.
Yeah,
unless you burn the Bitcoin to get it, unless you
yeah,
move it, unless this is Westworld style, Westworld 2, where they jump off the cliff and they turn into balls. So they leave this world, they go into that world. If you can take Bitcoins where you burn them, you burn the Bitcoins and you send them to another network, that's the only way that I would respect. Zcash is that, right? So
yeah,
that's the only way I would respect that.
yeah. Interesting. I, I'm a little bit torn about Bitcoin too. I mean, I really wish that they had like that was something that that community took seriously, because if they, and again, I know that there's probably a ton of technical things that would hindrances or things that would break or whatever, but that was clearly Satoshi's intent to have it anonymous. And I don't know. I think that that would be a legitimate undertaking. I also, I think, I wish that there was a more focus on making it like a currency instead of this. Like people are really focused on number go up, but early on, like I always imagined, and I did spend it. I mean, I always imagined it being used to buy and sell things, but that's not really really what it's being used for now. So, and that's kind of changed some of the like how the design is played out too. So
Yeah.
anyway, I one can dream, right? But like, yeah. So good times. Instead of going further down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, because I know some people are super opinionated about that. I think it's fascinating, but let's talk about your idea to in your work on Squares.
Hit me.
Okay, sure. So, all right. So you were working on, you were you had kind of taken up the mantle on ERC 721. So, when did you have the idea to create your own project?
So this was kind of a skin of the game issue. So here I am from the outside. I come on the scene. I come from open source.
Yeah.
I don't know, known entity, unknown entity. I had some good GitHub projects at the time, but who is this guy to tell us the way that NFTs need to be made? Like, who is this guy? And so, I leaned on my reputation as much as I can, but it's like I need to actually go deploy something if people are going to take me seriously, especially when PS every time I change something, everybody needs to redeploy. So I'm saying things, other people have to spend money. Like that's like politics now. So here I am. I'm like, okay, well, we need to add a function. And people are like, I can't launch my project until you finalize this, your stupid function. Right? That's a legitimate, I need to launch this now. Every time you open your mouth, I'm not launching. So I'm like, okay, I need to get in the same boat as you. So practically, this is what I said is, okay, well, I'm going to go make this project. And then when I open my big fat mouth and I make a change, I'm delaying myself and you. So at least I'm sincere when I say that I feel your pain. Practically, I mean that made a lot of sense to me. I was like, okay, go do this. Second, if you recall from CryptoKitties, I think you're OG in this scene. I think about CryptoKitties.
Yeah.
There's one problem. There are two problems with CryptoKitties. One of them is a set approval for all. So you can't, if you want to sell them, you have to sell them one by one. And two is you can't get the list of your kitties. So it doesn't really affect you now if you use a website that aggregates this for you. But if you're familiar with back in the day, it used to be a problem. Like you couldn't see which cats you owned. It was hard to track. People were complaining about this, and I got some flack working on ERC-721. They said, "Oh well, CryptoKitties doesn't scale. The contract broke after 40, 50,000 of them got sold or whatever. Therefore, ERC-721 doesn't work." I was like, "Oh no. This is an implementation problem. ERC-721 is going to work. It's just CryptoKitties didn't do it the right way, and we're going to do it a different way." They did it as kind of like real quick hack that got it launched and whatever, but we're going to do it in a way that scales, that you're going to be able to use. And people are like, yeah, no, this is too shiny. You're like, no, I don't believe you. So have fun in post-production. So they're like, no, I don't believe you. So show me that this thing scales. And I'm like, okay. So I went ahead and I made a smart contract that minted a quadrillion tokens in one transaction and assigned them all to one place. And you could list them. You could get all quadrillion of them. You could query the smart contract and get them. And I said, okay, does anybody still think that NFTs don't scale? And so that resolved the problem. So anybody, because that was actually a serious blocker back in the day. People thought it wasn't going to scale. They thought it couldn't go past 10,000 tokens.
Just on a theoretical basis, that it just at an arbitrary or just at scale, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah, they thought there was some type of for loops. I mean, if you know about smart contracts, we don't use for loops anywhere, but they thought that there was some type of technical debt or whatever, that as the thing grew, that it would stop working, because that happened to CryptoKitties, entirely coincidental. And, we don't have that problem going forward since 2018, but, show them, don't tell them. So I made it. And then as I got other questions, how do we do this? How do we do that? And I said, you know what? Okay, I'm teaching people how to make a thing. A standard is a blueprint. And the blueprint is teaching you technically what is an NFT. What are the functions you need? I said, that's not enough. What people want is they want, yet again, a red carpet and onboarding experience for the developers, for the creators. And what I was recognizing is I saw this coming and I said, you know what? I'm imagining some people are going to sell these NFTs and they're going to say something stupid in their website and they're going to break laws. This is what I thought. I said, somebody's going to say something. They're going to be used to these ICOs. They're going to say something dumb. I'll give you some specific examples. And then they're going to break FTC rules or SEC rules in the United States. And they're going to get in trouble. So I don't want that. So I don't really talk about this so much. Like a lot of people know about ERC-721, but Squares is actually the other half of the onboarding experience for people that want to make NFTs. And it's pretty simple. So you can read the whole Squares. You can read all the documents, top to bottom. You can get it. And it's subtle, but it's there. And you should use this as a starting point. For example, Squares, when you buy them, I'm William Entriken. My wife is Sue Entriken. We are selling Squares from the United States. A lot of NFT projects aren't like that. They're like, I'm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from Twitter Space. My location is Earth, and you're sending this to a random address. You know why? Because they're afraid they're breaking laws. I'm not afraid I'm breaking laws. I have an address on there. I have people mailing me, people know my phone number. I pay taxes on this stuff. I'm not afraid of any of that. I sleep at night. So I said, okay, I need to, the product is not just the NFT, the product is the positioning, the website. People go to jail or they get in trouble with the SEC or whatever, not based on the smart contract. It's because of how they sold their product. So here's the examples I promised. Some people are selling NFTs. They're like, okay, you're going to buy this NFT. You're going to earn money off it. But like NFTs to earn. I don't want to quote it exactly, but NFTs and earning money. I'm like, did you file a W-2? Did you file a 1099? Like, are you reporting taxes? Oh, because that's what earn means. Earn means taxes. Are you doing that? So don't call your project something to earn. Are you selling your product, your NFT, with the intention that other people are going to flip it and make more money? Because that's a security. Are you selling security? Is that what you want to do? You want to sell securities? No, you don't want to sell securities. You want to sell products. So Squares is like, this is not a security. I'm selling you advertising web space on my website. That's what I'm selling you. And I don't even link to OpenSea. I don't link to anywhere. I'm not trying to trade your Squares, right?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask real quick is, so were you inspired by like the $1 Million homepage or by Pixel Map, or was it? Okay, yeah.
$1 Million homepage specifically, and that's mentioned in Squares, so you can see it. We pay homage to $1 Million homepage, CryptoKitties, Dieter Shirley, It's right in there, and it's a good read. I wrote this stuff to be read and to be read by customers, but also to set an example. And so that's why that was my original motivation here to make Squares. Is I said, look, if I just give this standard, if we give this standard out and people use it, I'm like, this is going to be used for good and evil, and even unintentionally. So I've got to make an example here of how to market. And to be honest, I don't think that example took as far. I don't think a lot of people know how to make the NFTs. They know the technical up and down. They know about fungibility, semi-fungibility. They know about metadata. People know the word metadata. Like that's even a word that people get. Like people know what that means. Like 10 years ago, what's metadata? I don't know. Now everybody knows what metadata is. So they get this. But what people don't understand is the Howey test, securities, FTC. I hope that I could have done a better job with that. And Squares is my small contribution to help people understand how should you launch a project. I put my, again, skin in the game. I made this, so that I have the skin in the game. I have a project with my name on it. I pay taxes to IRS every year. I'm doing this. So I'm not in jail. You want to launch a project and you don't want to go to jail. I'm not saying you're not going to go to jail if you do what I do. I'm just saying that I've been here I'm the first one here and I'm not in jail and I sleep at night.
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple things I think are really fascinating is we have this, like it's been such we're kind of in this like weird space where, yeah, there's definitely laws on the books, but it's kind of a semi-wild west. We're still in the phase where there's more regulations being written and regulators are catching up. But to your point too, I was really amazed when I was checking out Squares, like your email address is on there and I just emailed you and you responded. I was like, wow, this is really rad. I've never seen another founder where they just
that's part of it. It's like, oh, somebody's selling something and they want you to call them. Like,
yeah.
Oh my God, that's a thing.
Yeah, I know. Like
yeah, that's a thing. Have customer support. Answer the phone when people want to buy stuff. Like, is this really, do I really need to teach this to people?
Well, like you said, almost everything else is hidden behind these cloaks of anonymity where, like you said, it's like, well, I'm dealing with 0x blah, like, I don't know who that is or what that is, or, so yeah, it's definitely interesting. So, yeah, how did you, so you started that kind of as, eating your own dog food, so to speak, also. So, what was that experience like launching that?
It was great. I had the same troubles other people had, so I had to keep relaunching it. So every time we changed something, I was the first person to relaunch it. So I'm the first ERC-721, the first draft ERC, like the first of each draft that came out, I was deploying it. I was constantly redeploying this thing to prove to myself that it even worked, that it was good enough to share with other people. And so that was painful for me, just like everyone else, more so, I guess, maybe. So I felt that. Going through it, I really wanted to keep it simple. So it wasn't so much hard. It was definitely collaboration. I was talking to other people, like, what words do I want? There's not a lot there. I mean, there's one FAQ, there's pixels on a homepage, pretty simple. And even then, I wanted to have a project that was not a CryptoKitty. Because it's in 2018, I'm like, okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to pass this. We're going to have CryptoKitties, crypto dogs, crypto gerbils, crypto fish, crypto mermaids. Like, that's where this is going to go. People, they're just not, I know how people work. You see something that makes $1 million, you want $1 million, you copy it. Like, I'm like, I know exactly where this is going. And so I thought this is going to be a few years until something that doesn't look anything like CryptoKitties happened. And to be honest, I didn't see Pixelmap at the time. So big ups to Pixelmap. Bigs up to these other projects too. I actually did not see them at all. And I thought, you know what? What's something that's not a CryptoKitty? Doesn't even have eyeballs and a mouth. Like, we're still on the has eyeballs in the mouth train. We're still on that.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right? We're still there. So I thought, okay, well, let's get something that's not eyeballs in a mouth, and we can use that, as a starting point. And then we can show other people that it's not just, eyeballs in a mouth. We can do other things. Now we have games, we have games with stuff in them, and we're finally diversifying. But I knew that this was going to be a problem. I knew that people were not. I knew that the masses were not going to be creative. They're just going to
And
copy paste the victory.
you were right on that too, because we saw so many clones. Some of these projects, they even just copied the smart contract verbatim. You know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
so yeah, there were a ton of those CryptoKitty clones out there. So, you know, and we saw that even with some of that profile picture craze last year too, where it's like every animal under the sun was its own little 10K collection too, you know. So yeah,
Yeah, and there's
interesting.
nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I support all these PFPs or whatever, but maybe we're missing some things. Maybe we're leaving opportunities on the table. Not leaving on. I mean, we'll get them eventually, but maybe there's things we could be doing now that are not PFPs. And PFPs are special, as we've seen. You cannot ignore the market. You can't be like, people are like, Will, are you embarrassed by all the PFPs out there? Is this not like, if you had a vision, is this not, the full vision that you have? And I'm like, that's the wrong question. The vision, I have the vision. We're going to get there. And, these people are contributing in different ways, but there's just more to do. Like, we're not done. And I can't make them not, I can't, the people that are making the PFPs, I can't be like, I want you to do supply chain security instead. Like, those are different people. So these are the people you have, respect that, appreciate the people you got. You want supply chain security people, you want games, you'll get them. But don't diss the people that are making PFPs because they're not doing the things you want them to do. Like that's the wrong way to go against, human nature.
The more we onboard, the more it'll, like, again, I view it as a momentum that we have to grow, with the user base and everything, So I think, again, even if it's ridiculous to me, hey, at least that person is interacting and is active, because there's so few people, relatively speaking, that have even taken gone through the effort to, get a wallet and interact, right?
Yeah, we're early. PFPs are very helpful to bring new people in. They get them. Here's a picture. I can use as my social profile. That makes sense. People get that. I have to go through a few steps. That's hard. That's going to get a lot better. That's the hard part, is these steps, not the NFTs part.
No, interesting. So yeah, you kind of, you put out Squares is kind of like you said, eating your own dog food type project, and trying to set a standard for how it can be responsibly run. Not that everyone is obliged to follow your lead, but one thing I thought was cool. So after you buy the Squares, then you're able to, for a nominal fee, you're then able to to put an ad, as you're saying, or whatever you want. Like, you can put image data on your squares. I think that's like we saw with Pixel Map. I think that's a really fun concept. I think as these continue to get sold out, we'll see more and more creativity in terms of what we see on the
the colors are going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. So what was the reaction from people as you started selling them, and they kind of like started playing around and putting data on there?
It was really exciting. So obviously the first people, so you can see the history, and all of it's on the blockchain, so you can rerun it. There's a thing where you can rerun there's an animated GIF. You can build your own animated GIF of Squares from the beginning, from 2018 till now. And the first ones are OpenSea. They bought one. I think OpenSea owns 721. No, nonfungibles.com. I should know that. Let me check right now. Who owns 721?
Oh, that's really clever. I wouldn't have even thought that. But yeah, of course, getting Square 721 would be, yeah.
Nonfungible.com. OpenSea's on there. They bought one. So in the beginning, everybody who bought one, they're like, oh, this is cool. I should personalize it. And they did it right away. Back in the day, 10,000 squares, Ethereum was $200. Half an ETH is $100. 100 times 10,000, that's $1 million. So it used to be like basically the $1 million homepage, which was basically what this is a clone of. And I even started calling people on the $1 million homepage. I called some of the people that bought the $1 million homepage. And I'm like, you should buy a Square. And they're like, what's an NFT? I still have that list. I had the list of all the people that bought the $1 million homepage. So maybe, that'll be a new sales project. Let me know if you're interested. And yeah, so I'm calling out these people. They're like, I don't know what an NFT is. I don't want this. But the original people, they came in because they're like, okay, cool. I want to advertise it. And they're obviously crypto people in 2018. They're like, I know how to do this. These gray squares, these are people that bought them but didn't personalize them. And one of the problems was back until recently, until several months ago, when you bought a square, personalizing it was expensive. So when these things originally launched, personalizing was like $1 in USD. It's like $1. But ETH has gone up. And so instead of being $1, it's like, it could be a lot of dollars. It was even up to like $50 personalization fee. And so that was really just too much. It was 1 finny. It was 10 finny. And I guess we don't even use the word finny anymore. It was 10 milli ETH. And when Ether was like $5,000, that was $50, which is a lot. So now we've decimated that and Ether's gone down. And so it's cheaper and the gas fees are way lower. So it used to cost like $100 to personalize. That was a commitment to personalize your square. Obviously, if OpenSea is going to buy a square, they're going to spend whatever it takes to personalize it because they're cool like that. Or nonfungibles.com, shout out. So they're going to do that. But not everybody. So we had to make this underlay contract. So that's kind of the first, that is the major feature. Not really version 2, but the major feature, the 1.1 on Squares is that you can now personalize for way cheaper. Problem is, honestly, here's the problem. A lot of the people that bought in the beginning, there was a craze, it happens. There's momentum. People come in for different reasons. And a lot of people came in, they bought, never heard from them again. They probably don't even know they own these squares. They're in the Discord, they turn the Discord off. They're in 100 Discords. And we don't spam very much in Squares Discord, but all you got to do is mute it once and then we've lost them.
Yeah,
Maybe a year from now they'll come back.
Yeah, because I was surprised. I picked up a small grid of Squares and I updated it. And I was really surprised to see of all of the ones that are owned, there's a very tiny percentage of them have been updated, which I thought was really surprising because if you go out of the way to buy something, why wouldn't you personalize it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
You can guess why. I can't say it because that's not the value prop. The value proposition of Squares is to buy it and to personalize it so that people can get traffic to your website. And I'm sticking to that. And maybe other people have different reasons for buying it.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah, of course. I get you. So fair enough. But so I think so the first legit ERC-721 NFT, which is quite a milestone. So and again, I really respect your tenacity to be fully doxed and available and file taxes and do all that. That's again, we need to see more of that to again have credibility for the space going forward. So because there's a little bit of a I think to people that aren't in crypto, there's kind of a they only see for the most part they only see the terrible headlines, so I don't know, that's just a problem that we'll have to get over with time too.
Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of, sometimes when we're on the inside we might not fully appreciate the perspective of people on the outside. And we see the news and we're thinking, oh, that's the news that they see and they only see this news. Imagine working in politics. Imagine working in Washington or Brussels. And you're like, wow, every news that comes out about everything that we do is terrible. Everybody must hate me. When I leave Washington, everybody must think I'm a this and that. Because that's everything that the news says. That's not the perception. The perception on the street is not that every single person in politics is bad. Maybe the perception is half the people are bad, whatever half, if there's a bifurcation. Or maybe the perception is a lot of these people are stupid, or there's a lot of different perceptions. But, I don't think the perception is that every single person working in rulemaking is terrible. But if you worked in there and you read the news, you're like, that's the impression other people might get. Crypto, same thing. So if we read the news, we're like, wow, all the news is about scams and profiteering and people that are in it for the money and not for the artwork and this and that and FTC and SEC going after people and people being anonymous because they're breaking rules. You might feel like, well, that's what people see. Well, that's what's published. And again, that goes back to media literacy. There's a reason why some of that stuff's published because it gets clicks. But, there's a lot of artwork. And these parties are something to write home about. I mean, these are good parties. This is artwork. Some of this artwork is decent. Not a lot of it, some of it. And, this is good stuff out there. And so when you get involved with one of these projects, your friend's going to be like, hey, get into this Discord. Here's how you introduce somebody to crypto. Hey, friend, go to this Discord and check this thing out. It's not like go buy all the altcoins.
Yeah.
Right? If the value proposition was tell your friends, hey, you should check out altcoins and go buy all of them, that's going to end poorly. But if you're like, hey, I know this one Discord, I'm going to vouch for it. You should go into this Discord. There might be a couple scams you got to watch out for, just like the rest of the world. And you're going to have a good time. That's a good onboarding experience. And that's immune from maybe other projects that are doing other things. That doesn't matter. That's other projects.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. I mean, again, if you keep the focus narrow and small, again, it's much more manageable, And
it's
I think
that's a different world.
Yeah,
don't think of the big world. Think of the little worlds.
And I hats off to Yuga Labs because one of the things they were enormously successful with was managing community and like branding and keeping that together. That's, to me, I think more than anything is why they really went gangbusters, more so than the art or anything else. I mean, they really did a great job on keeping that community and it paid off. So I mean, they made a tremendous amount of ETH and have social capital, and they're it's one of the most successful projects ever, really. So in the space. So yeah, I mean, that's to your point. The community building is, I think it's even more powerful than people give it credit for.
And that's the value proposition. People think it's the pictures. You're missing the point.
Yeah, there's a lot of over since last year, some of those communities or ownership of different collections have become prestigious because of the owner. Exactly. It's become like some of these have become Velbin goods for that reason. It's almost like a digital status item now too.
Yeah. More valuable than, I compare it, that's the flex value. So I compare it to people having a dating profile and then they got a photo in there. It's like them casually leaning up against a car that happens to be expensive. And the logo's in view, but it's kind of not really, but it is, And they lined it up just to do that, right?
Yeah.
Or you could just put a picture of some animal on your profile and everybody knows exactly what you're worth.
Yeah.
So less subtle, same effect. So I always want to compare these things back to back.
Yeah.
Because people have been doing casually dropping how much money they have in their dating profile versus not casually saying how much money you have on your Twitter profile. You want to compare these things because we have a lot more experience with the one versus the other. This Twitter thing, that's new. Putting your net worth on Twitter, that's a new thing.
I mean, but ultimately, like to your point, though, I mean, that's human behavior before even computers, right? I mean, it's just another way of doing it. So,
and that's more valuable than the picture, the collection for some people, for some collections, that is a value proposition, which you cannot ignore. You can't ignore that. You can't be like, oh, we're going to build around that. We're going to make something no, whatever you do, that's human nature. You need to understand it.
Yeah. Interesting. So I know you said you worked recently on this underlay contract that's made it cheaper to personalize Squares. Do you have any other, is there anything else that you've got in the pipeline that you want to do or make any additions or changes?
I have, I don't know about pipeline. I have some ideas.
Uh-huh.
So Squares is not a security, but if it was, then I can't tell you my roadmap. Maybe. I don't know. But I will tell you that we have a GitHub repo that's open, and you can see some of the ideas that we have out there, which I think are interesting and may work on. One of the ideas is our homepage. At the bottom, We have something, I don't know if you've seen it, it's called Tools. It's actually tools
Oh, I have.
dot 10,000su.com.
Is that what I used to? I used the little. Maybe that's what I used to update my tiles. I can't remember what the website was. That probably was it.
Yep, this is the official page. So it has the official URL tools dot, and this is the underlay personalized page. We also have the batch page, so you can update multiple squares at once, which really makes this
That's what
super
I
cheap.
used. I used the
Oh,
batch
you use
one.
the batch?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you used Excel or something?
No, I used there was a link to that program that cut up. You can input a PNG and it will cut it up
Yep.
into the individual chunks. And then I so it spits out a little zip file with all the individual chunks. And then, like
Yep.
you said, yeah, you sorted through there. And
But did you do one transaction or 12?
oh, I take it back. No, I did individual transactions. So I must not have
Okay.
used the batch. Okay.
You're cool. There's a batch where you can do all 9 at once to save
Oh,
gas.
I didn't know that. I did it individually.
You're not missing out. There's like terminal commands, like it's fancy.
Oh, okay.
But that's where the page is for that. I figured, somebody's going to want to do this, so we might as well build that page. Some people were asking, doing like 4x4. It's like that could get old fast, doing 16 of these in a row. But we have other pages too. So we have an all available page. So this shows, and it takes a second to load because it's loading all of them. Every single square that's available, whether it's a palindrome, whether it's a prime number, where on the page. Like you could paste this right into Excel, sort. Some people care about that, numerology. They're looking for certain things in there. So I wanted to make a page that's live that just had that information. Okay, a little bit interesting. Next one's more interesting. Every personalized square. So this is every square you're on there, and every square that was recently personalized. And so it's a list of them, every single square. And you can scroll and scroll. So these are some tips and tricks. These are cool things. And so the next thing that is a cool idea that could happen is that the homepage of SuSquares at the bottom below the main square could be recently minted squares, recently personalized squares, featured squares. I'm not featuring them. So this is not going to be like some other marketplaces where people got in trouble for featuring things and, whatever. It's not going to be that. It's not going to be human curated. It's just going to be recently minted, recently personalized.
Yeah, that takes the human factor out of it. So again, keeping you squeaky clean on that.
Yeah, and even if I wasn't, again, my mindset is here is not about me. It's not about SuSquares. My MindSquares is about everybody. So I want everybody doing this. I'm setting an example every time. So I want to see people not making these, editorial decisions on their homepage. That's a bad thing. We don't want that. So there should be a DAO or something. You obviously got to control that. Putting something on a homepage is important.
Yeah, I mean, so that brings up one of the questions I had. So I understand that the image data is on chain, right?
The pixels are on Ethereum.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is do you have any do you censor what you will render on the homepage?
This is in the FAQ, and so this is a super important question. Again, this is one of the first questions I put on there, thinking years ahead that this is gonna at least be a question. Here's the answer. This page is published from the United States. All the pixels are on Ethereum, which cannot ever be censored, period. This web page is published from the United States. There may be a day when somebody does something that is not legal to publish from the United States. And there's a policy on exactly what happens when that occurs. So the plan in that situation is to publish it from a different jurisdiction, publish it from Europe, publish it from somewhere where that would be legal. That's the first goal. And if there's no way to do that, if there's no way to publish it, then it will have to be censored.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Also, you can imagine this page, I've not committed to do this. I've not planned on doing this, but we might release an IPFS version.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And not Tor, because Tor's still hosted. I'm not talking about hosting this from the United States, but you don't know I'm in the United States because I'm hiding behind Tor. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about IPFS, where this is published once, zero editorial control, no server on earth owns this. It's published on Tor. Your website, your computer itself build Squares from scratch.
Mhm.
Because I think that's how we should, again, thinking big picture here. I don't want to see people just launching things on Tor because, they're illegal where they are and they don't want to do it. I don't want that. I want to see people publishing things permanently, fearlessly or legally in different jurisdictions where they can. And I'm going to do that. And
Oh,
that's been
interesting.
that's on the website. I mean, you can look at the Git history from day one. That's the plan, and it should be
Awesome.
everybody's plan. You should ask other people. Other people, and I'm not mentioning any I'm not saying other projects that are like Squares or and other projects, but if there's projects that have user generated content and you're spending a lot of money for that, you might care what their policy is. And they might be good people, they might do these things. But when you're buying something, I would like to see representations upfront about what their plans are. Because I think those upfront representations are part of a good product. And I think, let's make some good products here.
It's important. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is important. I mean, it's kind of if you're getting into crypto or you got into crypto a while ago, I mean, censorship resistance is one of the main selling points. So I think that's
one of the main values.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a value. I don't know if it could be a selling proposition because, and I think that's a little confused. Like just we were talking about before with Bitcoin, people making Bitcoin maybe thought that privacy was the selling point, but the people using it are not getting privacy.
Yeah.
I mean, we're using iPhones, which are, phone home devices, to use apps, which are phone home apps, to connect to Bitcoin directly without a VPN, to make transactions where everything we do is traced back to everything. Like, nobody's doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see. I value the censorship resistance. I mean, there's definitely at least like I guess you can definitely say though that even if it's not private, like having uncensorable payments has been valuable too, even with Bitcoin. I know, like for example, there's like things that are it's kind of in that gray area. Like in the United States, there's a medical system that like has a control on prices and whatnot, and you can use, like, for example, one of the easy ways that you can buy like legal drugs in the US, but much cheaper from other countries where they don't have this particular structure. Like you can use like crypto because it's uncensorable, and a lot of these places can't accept credit cards for obvious reasons because, the banks will block them from doing that. But yeah, you can get these, legit medicines and treatments and whatnot with, some of them aren't available at all in the US, or they're just way cheaper, or
I entirely support importing of drugs, gray market, to the United States.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's in a way, it's putting pressure on the government and regulatory structure. And because if they don't do something, then, now that we have uncensorable currency, we have the ability to circumvent that, So I think that's powerful.
It's making them more competitive because they got some competition.
Yeah.
You can't stop them with Visa. Visa turns things off, and that's even censorship from Visa, not from the government. Government tells Visa or the credit card processing networks, you can't do this. But also they take their own initiative. They can turn things off that they want to turn off. And so you've got multiple layers of censorship.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, one of the things that I remember was super chilling is when WikiLeaks and Julian Assange were blackballed by all of the payment processors, all of them.
Yep.
All
That's
of them.
what I was talking about.
And but also, more recently too, which is I think even more amazing, and I think I don't know if normies really got it, but the precedent that was set in Canada where people's bank accounts were frozen and or seized just for donating money to an organization, not even being charged with a crime, let alone committed of a crime. So that is a very ominous step that I think it sets a precedent that also reinforces the need to have self-sovereignty of your funds, at least even if you don't like crypto, having a small portion as a hedge is, I think, an important measure of financial security or safety.
Not everybody cares about that though. So
No, no,
you and
yeah,
I care about this. We know about this. Not everybody knows or cares, and that's a selling point. But never make that the selling point.
sure. I guess the final thought on there, just while I was thinking of it, it came to mind is, I remember back when the Cyprus Bank bail-ins happened back in the day. For me, that was huge news because I was kind of into finance and like watching how the stuff was playing out because I owned Bitcoin back then, and the thing that I thought was amazing is one, that was a very ominous precedent. But one thing that blew me away is I believe I was writing an article earlier this year, and then after I wrote that, I went back and I realized that I believe it was Sarbanes-Oxley. They codified bank bail-ins into U.S. law. That's now legal.
Bank what?
Bail-ins, bail-ins.
Yeah. Bail-ins.
Yeah. So somehow that slipped past me whenever that passed. But again, that's that's pretty spooky if you're if you have all your money in the bank, so to speak. So
yeah, we haven't seen a run in the bank. We haven't seen bank failure since SOX. SOX has done a lot. It's defined our era of. It's not as big as Bretton Woods, but it's 1/10 is that's pretty big.
And maybe
setting up our structure.
Yeah, maybe if it's not Sarbanes-Oxley, it's another bill that was passed. I could look it up, but anyway, there's a bill that one of the financial bills that was passed. Just if it's not Sarbox, it's another one that's Dodd-Frank. I'm sorry, it's Dodd-Frank. That was it. That where they codified the bank bail-ins. So anyway, well, yeah. So I guess we kind of went off on a tangent there. So so you've got some plans lined up for Squares that you're kind of tinkering around with. So I mean, you definitely have some opinions on how things have gone up to this point. Like, what would you like to see going forward, or what's your vision for the future?
For Squares, yeah. For me, so on the ground, I enjoy working on it. I used to use Web3.js, which is some technology that people use for dApps. Now Ethers is kind of de facto, or basically most people are using that. So I rewrote this stuff. So I rewrote it. The new tools are in Ethers. And so these tools, I'm here to make this better on the ground, like in small ways and visible ways. So again, I'm not committing to any roadmap here. But as you've seen, these things keep happening. So I appreciate these changes. That's product, and product doesn't, sell out. I would like to sell these all. I'm selling a product, and I would like to have a good product to prove that this works, to prove that you can sell squares using if you see how we're selling these squares, if you see me hustling on Twitter, me going to ERC, to NFT NYC and other events, and you see what we're doing and what we're not doing and what other projects are doing, and when this sells out, maybe I get some bonus points for being first, but it will be it'll be an inspiring, interview me then. Come back and be like, when we sell it, be like, okay, tell me what you did. Give me the full list of the marketing you did. And other people can be like, wow, this is very reasonable stuff that I can do, and I'm going to feel good about it. And so what I'm saying is we're going to use feel-good approaches here. This is another thing too. I've been through ICOs. I've advised some clients that have done some ICOs, and I've seen it. I would never do that. I know what goes on in those things. I know how this market works. I've seen other NFT projects. I've seen what goes on in those discords. I've seen the promises they're making. And Squares is kind of defined by the things we're not doing. So think about this two ways. There's no rocket boosters, temporary rocket boosters, because I'm not doing those type of things that are temporary. I'm doing things that are long term. And two, think of the type of people that are buying Squares. think of the type of people that resonate with this message. I've done a few interviews with people that have bought Sue Squares and, that thought that they would want to follow up on Twitter, come to Community Service Hour, our weekly Twitter space. Those are the type of people that you get in this community. And when you look at the people that personalize their squares, maybe that's a project you want to check out. And so when you make a project, maybe they want to check you out. So again, just like Yuga, right? It's about the community. So I'm pretty consistent in this message. I'm pretty consistent on why I'm doing this, who's here, who I'm trying to promote in this space. I don't control who's here. We don't have locks on the doors, but you can see the message I'm putting out and the type of people I'm trying to attract. And, maybe that's an inspiration that you want to meet some of these people more. You're interviewing me today. Maybe you want to interview some of the random people that own Sue Squares. And maybe you don't want to interview them because they own Sue Squares. Maybe because you just checked out their project and you're like, okay, well, maybe imagine the reasons you like Sue Squares, right? You bought one, I see your picture. It's right. You don't have to, I don't know who bought it. Somebody bought a picture and it looks like the same picture that I see on the screen right here. It's on Sue Squares, right? So
yeah, that's mine.
All right, so you dox yourself. So, that's a value proposition. This resonated with you. Well, there's other people it resonated with. And so maybe the projects you're working on, they're interested in. The squares, the squares are here. The community's up here. If you find other projects that have an about page like this and that are launching the way we launch, if you feel like this is a reputable project that's doing things that you want to support, maybe you just found 100 other projects.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like you said, the historical community is pretty small right now. So I would say outside of the people that are in there to flip or whatever, there's a small group of people that actually care because it's interesting or because of the history. So, I think it's cool. Again, the fact that, I thought it was fun tossing my punk up there, but also, just the fact that it's the first standards compliant ERC-721 NFT is super rad too. There's value there just for it being old too. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I know that it'll eventually sell out. Why wouldn't it, right? It's just we go through these boom and bust cycles in these markets. So when people aren't like flipping, a lot of the excitement dies down and a lot of people leave. But there's a decent amount of people that'll stay around, and I think it's a fascinating space. So
well, who's going to stay around because they personalize their square.
Yeah.
That's totally something that should have been different. It should have been buy a square, you personalize it when you mint it.
Yeah, that would have been
Never thought of that.
Yeah.
Remember, when I got in this space, there was no flipping. Flipping wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
I missed the boat on flipping. I'll be honest. I missed the boat on speculating. I thought there was, CryptoKitties. That's the only, the things that I mentioned in ERC-721. There was no rare Pepe flipping. There was no, curio cards. There was just, people that thought this was cool. There's a lot of that. And that was the beginning. Until last year, the only people that had Sue Squares, the only ones where you could see them, you could count them. There's just a handful. OpenSea, they had one of the first 10 or so. CoinGecko, they bought 2 Sue Squares. I went to Malaysia to meet them. I went to Kuala Lumpur. Cool people. So I know all these people, and those are the people that are personalizing the squares. They're chill. Look at the Lena. There's a Lena, which is the test image. Look at how many squares that is. That's a lot of squares, and they're not even selling anything. They're linking to a Wikipedia page. That's pretty chill. So think of who's doing this stuff, and why are they doing that? So I'm happy with the people. There's a percentage that are just bought them or whatever, and they're not doing anything fun. And I think eventually they'll come back, because they might not remember that they bought it, which is going to happen, right? But we only sold a third of them, so there's 2/3 left, and probably the people that are going to mint in the future, Now that the price is lower to personalize versus a year ago, that's a big difference. It's 10 times less and more. I think they're probably going to personalize it when they buy it, which will be cool. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm on Discord. I'm still there. I'm still churning. I'm still making features. It's good times.
Oh, awesome. Well, I mean, I think eventually we'll have another wave, and there'll probably be another hype cycle where people will rush in, and it'll like probably in a day or two it'll all be sold out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of how this it seems to work in the space. But so do you want to talk about any of the other projects or any of your other work that you do as well?
Oh, sure. So I do advisory work. So these are not my projects, but I advise clients. And so clients do the project and then I help in various capacities. One of them is on Squares. Right now it's a picture of Area, and Area now has Light. Light is dropping this week, next week, something like that. Light is a photography project. So this is the second project with this group. The first one was called Area. And so they just took Earth, they diced it into 40,000 latitudes and longitudes, and they're selling each one. I think it turned into free mint or rebate mint or something. I think it's a lot cheaper now. And it's just guess expensive to mint 40,000 tokens. So it's kind of a slow burn, but, and you can divide the tokens. So cool idea, but they're already on their second project. And the second project is working with some really awesome photographers. I mean, published the magazines that that have the best photographs inside, those are the ones that are a part of this project. So really, really premium photography. And technically it was cool. So I've been involved advising. I actually wrote these smart contracts, and it's really cool because they have drop phases. So they have, you might have seen like bonding where like prices automatically change. This one allows you to set prices manually. So you can announce the pay. I like it when you're very upfront about what you're selling and you make the rules clear and then you do them. And this has that. So you can log in today and you can set the different prices. So you can set on Monday, it's going to be this. And next Monday, it's going to be this. And you can sell that up front as opposed to you log in on Monday, change the price. You log in next Monday, you change the price. Because you announced it, but you're still kind of there. If it goes automatically, that's better.
Yeah.
We have access lists, formerly known as whitelists, and that's a pretty good implementation. We have reusable access lists, so there can be multiple phases, and you can buy now, and then you're ineligible to buy later if it's the same access list. So just cool technical features, cool product. I've been, head down with this stuff for a while, so excited about that. On the entirely other end of the spectrum is EY. Ernst & Young has been my client, and they worked on supply chain security for pharma. And that was one of the first use cases I got involved with in NFTs from the beginning, was pharma supply chain. It inspired my work on ERC-721. I was thinking about this from the beginning, and they're doing it. So they're implementing this stuff. They're going hard. They're working on zero knowledge proofs for NFTs. They've got roll-ups. They're using it in production with Merck Animal Health they've got certain vaccines or something, and they're tracked through the supply chain to the animal, dispensing for the animal.
That's a really great, that's a great use case. I mean, what could be more valuable than providing for the integrity and non-repudiation of the authenticity of these, like really important drugs, right? So, I mean, that'll be cool to see that expand too.
Yeah, we're working on it. I mean, I'm very impressed that we got this far this fast. I mean, I have a 10-year plan for NFTs, and this is like year 10. And the fact that they've already launched it is like, I mean, it's not everybody, it's not pervasive. Not everybody knows these stories, but even being in production with one use case within 5 years it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just having an example to show others that it can be done is super important.
That's the Squares of vaccines. On the topic of vaccines, I worked on one with COVID. So it was COVID testing. So you would go, Totally, kids here now. It's in Mexico, so it's in Quintana Roo, which is one of the states in Mexico. It's where Cancun is, and you go there, you go to the airport, and you get a COVID test, and they mint an NFT on testnet, and that is the certification that the test was passed, and that it is time stamped.
Interesting. Wow. I never thought about that, but that is definitely a really appropriate use case. I mean, like you said, time stamped again, like only the person that's running that thing can mint it. I mean, that's really cool.
It was really the use case clicked. You could do these things with QR codes, smart cards, health smart card, whatever that is. California uses it. There's different ways to do this that achieve the same result. You need a centralized registry of permitted entities that can produce that can sign the QR codes.
Yeah,
you gotta have a QR code. So with this one, we use QR codes that scanned into blockchain. They validated. We've got some nice privacy preserving ways that you can put health information in a QR code, but then doesn't go to the server. It's a really cool trick, which I'm seeing some more Fidgetals. They're doing this trick. I talk to people, they're like, we figured this one nugget out for COVID tests. And I talk to the Fidgetals people, they're like, we want to do this, but we want to keep it private, but we want a URL. I'm like, and it's link fragments. I'm giving it away. So use link fragments in the URL. And if you understand what that means, you'll get it. And they're like, yep, that's the secret. And so you can put health information in the QR code, but it's not going to the server. It's like a really cool trick. And it allowed, and we launched it. I mean, it's live. This is in the airport, is or was, I don't know if it's still there. And Mexico had a serious problem with COVID testing, which is a different problem than the US had. So if you're from the US, you might not appreciate the type of problem that Mexico had. COVID hit them faster, more acutely. There's more fake tests in Mexico. The money's different. The tests are relatively more expensive versus what people are making. The regulations are different. The expectations of whether you're going to get the test or not are different. In the United States, they literally give you a piece of paper that you can just write your own test result on it. The CDC cards, I don't think you need them for travel anymore. I don't know. But COVID's a totally different situation in Mexico and the US. And this really lined up with a fraud problem that they were having. So there was fraud, and there was a bigger incentive to have fraud in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And also it was affecting their tourism because Cancun kind of affected by tourism, right? So they needed to solve this problem, and they needed to solve it loudly. So this was really where NFTs, the hype, which is, I'm using hype in a positive word, helped. The hype helped them achieve this goal.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, it's related to Genobank.io, Avalanche, and Quintana Roo.
Oh, cool. I mean, you're working on some cool stuff. Is there any other cool stuff you've been working on or in the pipeline?
Yeah, I just announced I'm working with Tron US. They're coming into the US market. They've got some events lined up, and I've heard their plan, and soon they'll be announcing their strategy for the US events, and it really aligns with the way that I think events should be done. So good timing. I'm like, okay, this is how you should do events. It should be focused around teaching people stuff and providing value, because I can't give it away, but you want to give people stuff rather than just having them show up and ramming stuff down their throat. Tron is totally not about that. Tron will teach you how to use Ethereum. The stuff you learn at Tron, you can take anywhere. It's compatible with Ethereum. It's an EVM network. And the way that they teach stuff, the way that they put events that I've seen has been exactly the way you want to do this stuff. Their events are going to help Ethereum more than Ethereum's going to help Ethereum. And I've worked with Ethereum Foundation. You know, they sponsored in part some of the ERC-721 advocacy that I've done. And the events that Ethereum puts together compared to what they're doing is night and day. So I'm really really excited about that.
That sounds awesome. I'll definitely keep my ears open on that.
Yeah, you don't want to think like, oh, it's over. Like, you don't want to take a victory lap. Don't want to pat yourself in the back and be like, oh, smart contracts, blockchain, everybody gets it. We don't have to teach anymore. Like, People get it. We don't have to teach what is blockchain, ZK rollups, smart contracts, chains, staking. We don't have to explain this stuff anymore. People get it. No, we're not past the finish line. We got a lot to do. I'm still hustling. I'm on Stack Exchange answering questions still. What is a smart contract? How do I use ERC-20s to sell 721s? I'm still doing this, right?
Well,
I
yeah,
have a weekly community service hour. I'm still answering questions left and right. We got
I
a
mean,
lot of work to do.
yeah, I mean, to your point, one thing that blew me away is, last year, I think when at the end of the year, the number of people that had interacted with OpenSea, unique accounts that had done at least one transaction, was 1 million accounts. So I mean, we're still super early in terms of adoption. So yeah, you're right. We still need to, and to your strength, we need to keep these outreach and these community development and education initiatives going, because you know without that, it really will turn off people, like you said, it can stop them from, they won't come back around for years, right?
We need the experience to be better, and people just require support. I
Hmm.
feel like there's not enough of that out there, and I'm doing it. So, be the change you want in this world, right? So, I have a vision for NFT. I'll just tell you my mission. My mission, it's on 4.net. I'll read it exactly. Mission: verify seller claims and authenticity for most things you buy. Like anything you
Awesome.
buy,
Yeah.
however you buy, credit card. I don't
Mhm.
care how you buy stuff, but we want to use NFTs, some of the moon dust. If you've been to the moon and back, some of the moon dust, bring it back and sprinkle it on these other things that are the real world. And that's my goal. Like, that's a big goal, right? And so for me, the way to verify seller claims, make all the products you buy better, everything, like where your money goes, half of that stuff, right? So the way for me to do that right now is for me to teach people what is NFT is, to do interviews, do the community service hour, answer questions, hustle, do advisory. There's still room for that. I'm not ready to retire off of Squares. If we sell Squares, it'll be, I don't know, however many $1 million. I'm not going to retire. That's not the goal. The goal is not to sell Squares. The goal is to verify seller claims and authenticity for most things you buy. Whoever you are, half the stuff you buy. Like, that's a lifelong goal. That's like Elon Musk. That's like die on Mars. So that's the level of goal I'm working on.
Well, that's very impressive. I hope that we see a lot of this stuff, we see the adoption, and we see the maturation of this technology continue. It's going to be, I'm sure the next 5 years are going to be another wild ride too.
Different kind of ride.
Mhm.
Different kind of ride for the next 5 years. Not going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I've other than what we already discussed in terms of some of the maturation of the platforms, with scalability and throughput and change of consensus models. I'm just really excited to see what comes up, because with that in place, who knows what innovations and what applications people are going to choose to deploy. So the sky's
The
the limit to me.
applications. I think that all the innovation that's going to matter is going to be the new applications. The frameworks are the same. Maybe we'll get proof of stake. We don't need anything more fancy than the way that we're selling NFTs today. We don't need anything fancier than that. We don't need fancier networks. We don't need rollups that are fancier than what's already out there. We don't need any of that stuff. What we need is people with ideas for the future. We need people that are having not just pictures with eyes and a mouth, people that are doing event ticketing, people that are connecting you to brands, people that are connecting to stuff you care about. Like, we already built that. Like, we're ready to go. And but it just takes time to make the applications come along.
Yeah, I mean, and once we have like you said, once we have that, the throughput, and again, avoiding another CryptoKitty situation where they they crush the network, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. I mean, I'm excited to see what comes up. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? I mean, I know we've covered a lot.
Bring it back. You tell me. So give me your top 3 applications for 2030.
2030, gosh. Um, you know, I would imagine that we're going to have identity. Maybe for some governments are going to start using cryptographically non-reputable identities, like whether that's on a public or private blockchain. I could definitely see that happening. Um, it makes too much sense in terms of the application. I could even see the switch for some things like vehicle titles and maybe even real estate and some. I could see a switch to some in maybe a couple of countries or something making the first toes into the and there as well. Um, because I had heard someone talk about that who had moved to uh, moved to a country. They moved to Costa Rica, and they were telling me this story of essentially like the scam that they pulled off is because there's this corruption at the courthouse and one of the locals. This guy owned a house, and they were able to just essentially bribe the court the guy who did the registry for the deeds. They assigned him the deed out from underneath them, and now he's SOL, right? Well, this definitely changes that. So those are a couple ideas I think. I
Were you giving me identities, deeds?
Yeah,
Oh, you didn't give me cars and deeds, two different things.
Yeah, cars.
Oh, no. That's A and B on number 2.
Okay,
give me number
okay.
3.
What would be number 3? I think this is separate from government identities. I think we'll see some sort of um, social / peer reputation / build like management / profiles. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, I think something like.
I love how you threw all those words together because you can't say it without all of them.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're going to see platforms or systems like that. I don't know how that's translated, but I could definitely see that being a thing.
Yeah, those might even be soulbound tokens, so reputation tokens.
Yeah.
It might be a solution to the 5-star rating problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's real.
It's a serious problem.
Yeah,
you don't know what's spam out there. You don't know what to buy. You don't know what your friends are buying.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I remember seeing a video of the click farms and review farms where they have this wall of mobile phones where they're just like they've got it programmed to where it's really kind of impressive, the ingenuity there. But yeah, of course, that makes a lot of sense. I guess there's the other thing I'm kind of interested to see where things go is we're also not on the cusp of just the cryptocurrencies, but governments are we're right on the cusp of governments getting serious with CBDCs too. And to me, I think that's a little bit ominous in terms of where governments will likely go with that. So that's also something, by 2030, we should definitely see some of those attempts already out there and in production, I would imagine. So that's something also to look out for. I don't know if you have any thoughts on.
Absolutely. So big blockchain should be the default for government. Why? Because government by default is public and irreputable.
Yeah.
No repudiation, right? So that's the default. That's what is government. Government is public, open records, usually depending on where you are, and they are authentic. Everything they touch is authentic. Everything they do is officially official. That's the definition of official, right? So what is blockchain? Blockchain is tracking stuff permanently and preventing fraud and doing things that are official.
Yeah.
Under the authority of something.
One of the crazier visions I've had is essentially we have this trust, corruption, reputation problem with government is essentially having everything that's done in a government or by a government worker recorded to a distributed system somehow that's publicly accessible.
We have this. It's called right to know law. So in the United States, we have Freedom of Information Act. there's this great law which you can query any document for any public thing in the United
Well,
States.
no, it's not. It doesn't work quite like that. There's a lot of stuff that's redacted. That they have the way I imagine it is, in a perfect world, is like video surveillance, computer input, everything real time is dumped to a non-censorable public record. Think about like the problems with that we have with like cop body cameras, how some of those the footage goes missing and that kind of stuff. Like, again, like to your point, government should be public. Let's make it really public, right?
We're close there. So yes, police body cams. Yes, things that can be redacted. Yes, things that are embarrassing. Those do not represent a majority of government. A majority of government is your house, taxes. A lot of government stuff is just not sensitive, and you can get it.
Well,
I'm saying is focus on the 80-20 here. Don't focus on
you
getting access to live body cam footage from police on live stream. That's so sensitive. Let's do that last. Let's go there last. Let's focus on house registrations to make title insurance, less necessary. And some states have state law which implements FOIA at the state level, which is better than FOIA. For example, Florida has, it's called the Sunshine Act. All the government emails, they're public. If you email government, they're like, hey, PS, this is public. You emailing us right now, this is public. In the footer of any email to anybody you mail in Florida, it's state government, the response says, your email is recorded and this is public record, period, every time. It's great. And you can call them and say, I want all the emails. Like right now, I'm doing a public records request against Texas. I'm like, I want the emails that mention this from here to there. And they're like, well, this could be a lot of emails. We're going to have to work hard on redacting this. I'm like, whatever, I'll pay for it. Like, this is something I need to do. But Florida would be like, here it is. Like, we don't even blink. We don't redact it because we knew we weren't going to redact it when we made these emails.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. So Texas is a little worse than Florida, but there's hope out there. Yeah. So I'm saying, what you and I could do, we could call Florida and we could say, you know what? I want every email, period. I'm showing up with my, Pet Farm. Where do I plug in? Because you can't email me these files.
Yeah.
And we just blockchain it.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get your point. Yeah. Start with the easy wins. Again, like long-term, I would think that, I don't even believe in secrecy for the State Department or the federal government. I think all of that, again, one of the reasons that Julian Assange was chased to the ends of the earth and persecuted to the extent he did is the cables that he released and the footage he released, because it was so embarrassing to the State Department and the DoD and the government. So, I think like we were talking about privacy by default for citizens and their financial transactions, I think the opposite should apply to government. It's public by default, and a lot of the excuses for secrecy are just methods. Yeah, it's just excuses.
I used to work in DoD, and I have an opinion on this stuff too, and I almost got into a career with some of these things we're talking about.
Okay.
And yeah, it's and government works differently when they know they're being watched. Florida works differently than Texas. I'm asking for these records from Texas. Because I think I might find something that's going to embarrass them. It's really going to help me. And Florida, I would never expect that. I would never expect Florida to give me something embarrassing because they know they're being watched all the time.
Yeah, so you're right.
And I'm in the middle here. So I'm a fan of making government records public, even for the State Department, going forward, not backwards. Like what? How is that helping anybody? Well, because it's different rules. If you knew this was private, you might have said things that are private. But those are the records we want. Well, guess what? Grandfathered. Going forward, you can make things public. Going backwards, keep them private. Whatever. I'm not here to debate this. I'm just saying that the big picture, I'm thinking long term, is that we want things to be done more transparently. And that includes not just, we're not here to hurt people. We're not here to, shove it in and twist it to get them. We're not here to get them. We're here to change the way the government works. We're here to change the way that public functions, the way that transparency works. We're here to create transparency. Not, maybe other people are trying to shove in the knife and twist it. I'm not here for that.
It's not about it's not about embarrassing anyone. To your point, like you're talking about Florida, you know, uh, organizations are not going to make the same decisions that they would have when they don't have to worry about the information, like the choices and the information about what they did becoming public. So
Yeah,
yeah, I ultimately I
they
just think
function
that
better.
yeah, exactly. Ultimately, I think it's going to be. I mean, maybe we'll eventually get there, but ultimately, I think that would be a big public good.
So we are. I'm part of that. I'm part of FOIA. I'm working on Right to Know. I'm working on Code.mil, the effort of Department of Defense to open source stuff, which is like open source.
I didn't know
Department of
that.
Defense is actually a thing. They're pretty good about it. I mean, they've got good policies on this stuff. These things are moving. So I've been tracking open source, government transparency, Department of Defense. Been tracking these topics for a while, and they're moving in a very progressive direction.
Yeah,
And we
maybe
can
I'm
help
just
them.
yeah, maybe I've just I haven't been watching that space, so it sounds like we're way further than I imagined. So that's definitely good.
Yeah, I mean, you're an ally here, so I just want you to see. I want you to find some of the good, and not just look at the news, because the news obviously is going to catch the failures. I want you to look at the Sunshine Act in Florida. I want you to call them. Ask for something in your state, wherever you are. If you're in the United States, look it up, because it's called, usually at the state it's called Right to Know, but at the federal level usually it's called Freedom of Information Act. You're just looking at that stuff, and I use these things. I've got news coverage for my FOIA requests or Right to Know requests. I'm in Pennsylvania, and I've done good things with this stuff. I've done the Philadelphia, right next to Philadelphia traffic court was disgraced. They were shut down by the FBI. Like, that's how bad it was.
Wow.
The traffic was shut down by the FBI for graft and all, whatever it was. And so I did a records request. I said, I want every ticket that you ever wrote, all of them. And they said, oh, this is going to take us forever. Computer this. We're going to need $10,000. Called the newspaper. Said, I gave them the story. They're like, it was in the newspaper. Why do they need $10,000 to give the tickets to this civic hacker? And the next day, I get a phone call, and here I am. I got all the records. I published them. I put them on GitHub. So now we're doing like, if you want to write a Python model, you can see which people pay their tickets, which ones get canceled. I mean, you can see it. You can look based on their last name, and you can guess what their race is, and you can see if certain people with a certain race get more tickets canceled. You can do this with transparency. Now, this is one of those push it in a turn, because they didn't think this was going to go public.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I asked them for it, if I went away and didn't spend the 10 grand or get the newspaper on my case, nobody would have seen this. But now here it is. You can do last name analysis of ticket cancellation with public records. I mean, that's what we want, right? We want to stop racial bias for policing. We want to stop, all this stuff. This is what that looks like. And this happened. So I didn't get the body cams, but I did get the tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a start.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Look into it. There's a lot. If you're interested in this stuff, there's a lot moving.
Interesting. No, I had no idea. That's fascinating. Again, like, and to your point, just you doing this is definitely going to change their behavior going forward.
Yeah, you get caught with something like that. Now, I actually didn't find heavy hitters. I didn't find like the smoking gun, or actually didn't get a lot of people in that project yet. But the data's there. I mean, you can do it anytime. These police still work there, right? So you can go find them anytime. But you can do your analysis. You can find whatever biases, and you can make a case, and you can get in the newspaper. This is great stuff. And this is database policing. I actually found some people through that initiative. When I published that, I found Philadelphia has a data person, like the data officer of Philadelphia, got in touch with him, and some other people are just into database policing. Again, yes, you're not going to get the body cams. Yes, shootings at schools, you're not going to see extra footage that you're not going to see. Some of that stuff's going to be private, and that's going to be the stuff you want the most. What do you do? But there's other stuff that's just as damning, and that it can be more damning because you can get bigger data. You can get more people in your net of analysis. And we're not here to damn people. We're to help people. And You can find these patterns and you can petition for why we need to improve.
And another thing too is even for the data you can't get directly, you can analyze the end result, and you can basically model and reverse engineer the like you in this case you'd be reverse engineering the policies or the behaviors that they're actually doing through the end result, right? Like you don't actually have a smoking gun saying, hey, ticket only minorities or whatever, but or at a greater rate, but you can actually show like what actually happens and infer that way.
Yeah. And you have to make the story though. You can't just do data and be a nerd. Like the story, the product is you got to do your analysis and you got to convince the newspaper that it's worth running. That's part of it. That's part of the game. So you got to, full circle, you got to deliver. The product, your goal is not to just get data. Your goal is not to get body cams. Your goal is not to get open networks, the open records. Your goal is not to make blockchain, everything on government blockchain. Your goal is to change the world, right? So that includes data, analysis, marketing, and making people care about it, and then inspiring a change.
Yeah.
And we can get there a lot faster than, blockchainifying the whole thing. But no, these things go together. So bringing it back, blockchain's public by default. Sunshine Act in Florida is open by default. Sunshine Act makes records certified. They want to prove that these things are official government things. Blockchain, everything's certified. We're getting lined up here. So these things connect.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're
values.
Yeah, I think I see what you're talking about. I mean, we could similar to how we've seen the gradual state by state decriminalization of like recreational marijuana as an example. Like Florida can be the first state that does it, and by doing so, it's like game theory. It's putting pressure on everyone else to adopt it because they will look worse in relation. So, yeah,
I'm impressed with the progress in state that the states are making in my lifetime at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to have to read up more on it because I wasn't aware we're making such good progress. Let me think if there's anything else. No, I mean, is there anything else you want to bring up? Because man, we've covered a bunch. I mean, this has been a very fun interview, though, very thought provoking.
It's my pleasure for sure.